I was trying to order cut watermelons and eat it with you on set, but I couldn't find anyone. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Watchcollectivetwo podcast. My name is Ahmed Gaudat. I'm your host and one of the Watchcollectivetwo. And today I have the man who outsold Rolex UK for one day. I mean, that's one hell of an achievement. Today I have Richard Benc of Underd0g. Thank you so much, Richard, for accepting the invite.
No, well, thank you for having me. This is my, it's been an exciting few days. My first time in Dubai, and thank you for the warm welcome and the kind intro as well.
Thank you so much. Actually, I cannot believe we actually doing this, since we got acquainted and we got in touch shortly, let's say a couple of days ago. So I'm really happy to have you. And I think we have a lot of things to talk about. And I think one of the things that the audience are gonna be interested in is what was your story before Studio Underd0g? Because you're a hot shot now in the watch industry, and you are being followed by a lot of people. So people know your updates, right? But maybe before Studio Underd0g is something that we should touch base on.
Yeah, well, again, you're too kind. You flatter me, but as part of the Studio Underd0g sort of branding, I'm kind of an open book. So yeah, very happy to talk about what I was doing well before Studio Underd0g.
So I think we should start from you finishing design school and the era before Studio Underd0g. So maybe you can give us a quick brief on how was it going before Studio Underd0g?
Yeah, so I guess in a way that's kind of where it all began. So I studied product design or industrial design at Nottingham. I did a 4-year course, absolutely loved it. So I did a master's degree there. Most of my best friends to this day were from that course. Last week I was in France on a holiday with them all. And yeah, it's all the same group all together. So I've made some really tight connections there. This was the first trip actually that there was a baby on the trip as well. So things are changing, compared to what our uni life was like. But that's kind of where it all started.
Yes.
Did this degree, absolutely loved it. And once I graduated, I was applying for jobs in London like a madman. That was where I wanted to be, again, mostly because that's where my friends had ended up. I'd never lived or been to London much before. But because my friends were there, I wanted to be there. So pretty simple. And the roles that I was kind of applying for, what I wanted to get myself into was like consultancy roles. Because quite simply, I thought I loved my course, I loved my degree, where you have an opportunity to design all sorts of things. I designed a water bottle, a snow sports helmet. Everything is on the table when it comes to that course. So I wanted to do the same. I wanted to work for a consultancy where every project is going to be different. Every brief is varied. One day I'm designing a golf club. The next day I'm designing a shampoo bottle, whatever it is. But unsurprisingly, those jobs are super competitive. It was really challenging to get that sort of role. So I was continuing to apply for other design related roles. After all, the objective was, I want to get my foot in the door of London. That is it, and that was me stumbling into the watch industry. That was me, the first job that I managed to secure was a job where I had the chance to design watches. And we're not talking high horology here. The first watch that I designed, it was a Minions watch where you pressed a button and a yellow disc would shoot out. So this was a watch for, a 5-year-old. This was more of a toy than a watch. But somehow this was me being introduced to designing watches. And I think one of the most important parts that it took a while to click, but ended up being a bit of a eureka moment, was I always gravitated towards designing small objects, because then it's all in like the nuance, it's all in the refined details. So yeah, that was a bit of a weird segue and introduction into the watch industry, but that was my start, as it were.
So design career, stumbled into the watch industry, and then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And actually, I mentioned this to you previously, but at the time when everyone was panicking during COVID, either you're worrying about your job, you're worrying about the future, the whole uncertainty things. The most courageous thing people would have done at this point in time was trading stocks and making some cash. But at this point in time, you decided to design a watch. So how did you end up like that? I mean, doing that?
There was no strategy to it. This was no big master plan. This wasn't me seizing an opportunity. This was very much, lockdown hit. I was bored, as everyone was. I was stuck at home, as everyone was. So I split my time between playing video games, getting as good as I could at Call of Duty. I'm useless to this day. So that was 50% of my time. The other 50% of my time was spent on a little passion project, a design brief that I'd set myself. It was nothing more than that. This wasn't me thinking, it's a bit of a cliche, but this wasn't me thinking I'm going to disrupt an industry, which is kind of what I think a lot of small micro brands coming to the market try and achieve, and it almost becomes a bit of a common slogan or a tagline. This was a design project that I set myself. I felt quite simply the watch industry was quite a serious place. I wanted to do something fun, whimsical, playful, that should also, be considered a serious product. I think one of the first things I used was why so serious? That was I thought best not step on any trademarks, so I've kind of moved away from that. But it kind of illustrates the concept that I had, and it was nothing more than a design brief to myself.
Yes.
It's quickly snowballed from there, really.
And touch wood again. The Kickstarter campaign, it performed amazing, so it pledged 400 to 500 as far as I remember, and it got the attention of the biggest YouTubers, influencers, like you name it, like Andrew Morgan.
Not at first.
Yeah, I actually want to know how did this happen, because the project was amazing, don't get me wrong, but it caught the attention of almost everyone. So Andrew Morgan, Time and Tide, so almost everyone. Hodinky as well.
Yeah, it took a while though. That wasn't off the bat, So I think for any brand, for any project or any product that's coming to market, you look at the mainstream editorials, and in the watch world, the Hodinky was a grail feature, being talked about on Watchfinder, where Andrew Morgan kind of pioneered that style of video. That was a holy grail sort of moment. But I wasn't quick to get there. So I'll walk you through, because it's I guess hopefully somewhat interesting. When I launched the brand, you're sort of banging your chest. You're trying to beat the drum in terms of trying to get the exposure, trying to get your name out there. You want people to discover you and talk about you.
Of course.
But it's really difficult to do so because you don't exist yet. You may have some nice pictures or some nice renders, but until you can get products out there and there's real customers and real consumers, it's a bit of a risk for certain, for editorial to talk about you, because I may have put out a nicely designed watch, but there was a chance that when it came to the execution of it, or when it came to the quality, that maybe it wouldn't live up to the expectations. So it's always a risk from the outset. So that was a real challenge, in the beginning, trying to get the exposure, trying to, to reach out to people. One of the first features that I managed to secure was with Jody from Just One More Watch.
Just One More Watch, yeah.
And this, I guess, shows, how I approach things, right? So it's quite clear that my design inspiration is quite playful, but that's actually a vein that runs through the whole way that I think in terms of marketing, communicating, storytelling, even from the outset. So when I wanted to reach out to Jody and say, I'd love to send you a watch so I can get some feedback, I thought, he was the kind of the pioneer of talking about new indies and micros. I thought, if I send him an email, how far down that inbox am I going to be? Everyone will be doing that. So I said, you know what, I'm going to show him that actually I'm a fan of his. I watch all his videos. So I'm going to send him, rather than an email, I'm going to send him an introduction in a format that I know that he knows and loves, a video. So I sent him a 2-minute video introducing myself in a way that I knew he would understand, because I put a lot of, the way he introduces himself. I introduce myself in that style. I kind of made lots of basically in-jokes to show that I was a fan of his. And I got an email back more or less instantly. It was a 2-minute video. I probably got an email back within about 3 minutes saying,
wow,
this is great. Please send me the products and we can talk. So it was it's a hustle, it's quite easy to write an email and send it out. This, was a bit more thought through and took a while, but of course that really helped. So that was the first, I guess, that was the real start.
But I love the way you communicated the pitch to him, because this is his language, right?
Yeah.
And this is how you're gonna capture his attention as well, because an email, too much text it can be a little bit boring for someone to read, especially if you're having like tons of emails like you're expecting, right?
Exactly. And I followed that through. So that was the start. If we talk about, I was featured on the Watchfinder channel, which was a huge moment for me. That was a while after the brand had started. So we had matured a little bit. And I took the same approach where at least twice over a 12-month period, I drafted Andrew Morgan an email. I wrote introducing myself, introducing the brand, and then I hit delete. I said, he's going to get so many of these emails. I'm just not going to bother. Until the third email that I wrote a one-liner just saying, hey, I'm Rich. Let me know if you'd like to see a product or whatever, because I knew the only way to get his attention would be if I'd already got his attention. If I was already on his radar, it needed to be, he'd see this email and go, oh, Studio Underdog, I've been meaning to get hands-on with that product. I didn't want it to be an introduction.
Yeah.
The only way I felt like I was actually going to build a relationship is if he knew the product already, and then it could start. And unfortunately, that was the case, and that happened. So yeah, it's always, I guess, a little bit of a different approach, whether I'm designing a product, telling a story, even reaching out to editorial, that, I do it in my own way.
But each step of the journey had its own complexity and story. And I'm a big fan of Andrew Morgan, by the way, like a very big fan. And I think once Andrew talks about a watch, then it is the watch that people are looking at. And to be honest, if Andrew is featuring a watch, 99% it's going to be an extremely good watch as well in quality and in concept. So I understand your point when you were mentioning there is a risk related to featuring something, because the concept could be amazing, right? But the execution and the end product is not going to be up to the standard.
Yeah.
But eventually, at the end of the day, it worked fine for you, and everybody was talking about your watch. And maybe we can touch base on the design itself a little bit. Why watermelon?
I wish I had, an amazing story or a eureka moment. It was quite simply, I wanted something fun and playful and whimsical. And in terms of polarizing colors, if you talk about introducing a watch where, look, most customers, most collectors, it's sort of a 95+% male audience. The idea of doing a pink and green watch is so uncommercial. It's, it just
far from commercial, my friend.
It doesn't make sense on paper, but that was part of the humor. That's what's led to something quite unique. And I do credit that to being one of the kind of the key reasons for the success, is because I wasn't coming into the industry or launching a project thinking, how can I sell the most amount of watches, right? I came in setting myself a passion project, setting myself a design brief, basically making a watch that I'd want, regardless of whether other people wanted it or not. But fortunately, because I was an enthusiast, starting my humble little collection, that kind of, my ideas and what I enjoyed and what I was drawn to obviously resonated with people as well. So that non-commercial approach actually led to something unique.
Yes.
The analogy that I give, and I mentioned it to you earlier, is a lot of brands now that are coming to the market will follow the data, right? So they'll go, okay, So dive watches are the most popular. That's, the vast majority of watches sold. I'll do a dive watch. What colors are popular? Okay, black is the most popular. I'm going to make a black dive watch. And then suddenly, you've got a dime a dozen Submariner homages, and it's really difficult to stand out. That sort of way of thinking was so far off my radar because I wasn't planning on launching a brand. But that's what created something really unique.
But what I love about the brands, and so first of all, I love the Series 1, and I told you I love the Series 2 even more. But if we talked about the Series 1, I would say that it was designed by a legit designer because of the details. So the details itself, like the seats, the texture, even the alignment of, we talked about it, the alignment of the Underdog, Studio Underdog logo, and then the bi-complex statement, and then the second hand would stand in the middle, so the two logos would show up. So it's done, it's well designed.
And that was literally the project. It was a design project. It was a design challenge that I set myself. That's the reason I kind of went with a chronograph from the outset, because it's kind of a more complex design challenge. There's more on the dial to balance and offset. One of the first things that I started with in terms of the design process was the big eye, because it's so polarizing. It creates such imbalance. Making small graphic design decisions and refinements in the detail to kind of restore balance in the dial, that was sort of part of the challenge. And I do think it will surprise some people, but, at a glance, you certainly wouldn't think that this is kind of inspired or has any Bauhaus sort of influence.
It's far from Bauhaus. This is the thing.
But there are some elements in there. It's part of the process. That was my background. I spent sort of 5 or 6 years designing for Brown. It's sort of very sort of black and white dials, super minimal, all in the sort of refined details. And I kind of followed that through. I also had a bit of a rebellion from that, obviously, with the use of color and playfulness. But when it comes to the kind of graphic design elements, it's relatively refined. And that's almost part of the humor. That's almost part of this juxtaposition. You've got elements, that are hyper modern in terms of this dial, that, the color, the playfulness, the vibrance. But you've also got a lot of vintage references coming in, that I picked from the 60s and sort of applied to the design. So it feels familiar, but also looks unlike anything you've ever seen before. And again, this joke can be sort of almost understood at a glance. Even if you don't understand the full roots or meaning of it, people kind of pick up on that. Even if they can explain why they like it, you're kind of drawn to it. And that's all from kind of the design approach.
And this watch was, the Kickstarter campaign was Q1 2021, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
March,
yes,
maybe.
Yeah.
And it was 4 colors. At the beginning, it was 3, no?
Beginning was 3, yeah. So I think we did the 3.
I got good memory.
That's good on you. I'm close on forgotten. We did the 3. So it was the watermelon, which I thought was kind of the hero piece in terms of the marketing. And then we had the desert sky and the goofy panda, which I thought that people would discover the brand from seeing the watermelon because it's so polarizing. And then when it came to actually, if they were going to make a purchase, might go for something a bit more subdued. But actually, to this day, the watermelon is still the kind of the one that captures people's imagination.
The watermelon is the signature. But the thing is, so Q1 2021, it was the Series 1. And then Series 2 came, I think, 2 years after, right?
Yeah, possibly even more. So it was November 2023. So yeah, even more. Coming close to 3 years,
yes.
Really.
So, okay. Don't you think it was too late for one reason? And I'll tell you my thoughts, right? If I'm having, if I founded the watch brand and it performed well, like yours, I would like to have more models coming up so it won't be considered as a hype piece or a hype brand. So what happened that made you a little bit delayed, let's say?
Well, I'd love to say again, because actually the gap between has, I believe, led to, further success. But that wasn't a strategic decision. A lot of that was taken up by sort of complexities with the challenges of the design and development of the O2 series. But what I would say is, even though there was a gap from initial introduction of the O1 series, when we did the Kickstarter, not many people had discovered the brand.
Yes.
It was still relatively underground, as it were. And so even then, sort of 18 months later, slowly people are starting to discover it, and it's becoming, a bit more of a name. So a lot of people, when they'll have discovered the brand, it would have been sort of, 18 months, 2 years on. So the gap doesn't feel quite so long when the O2 is coming. But the original plan for the O2 was to launch it in October 2022.
Okay.
And it actually launched in November 2023.
Yeah.
So a full year after. And that was because we hit some challenges with the development. So for the O2 series, I'll sort of try briefly explain the kind of the complexities or what makes it a Studio Underdog watch. So we've got a base style, which is a brass base style. We've got 7 layers of superluminova, so the glow is a bit of a punch in the face. And then we've actually on the dial got a 1 mil thick piece of sapphire crystal, and that's all held together by a couple of fasteners, yes, which are pride and place front and center of the dial. Because I kind of want people to ask, what are those screws doing there? Because then you're asking and you're starting to learn, about this construction. On top of that, we've got then the numerals. Essentially, not only is it playful because of the loom, but you get these amazing shadows under the numerals and the printing, and that's kind of the fun, playful twist that is what our brand is about. That's the design process for us. The challenge, maybe it's a bit boring, but it's
no, it's not at all actually.
The challenge that we faced was because it was a multi-layer dial, and because not many people had used. Well, I'm not sure if any have used sort of a luminous material and a sapphire in the construction that the way that we've done it. I'd be happy to be proved wrong, but as far as we were going,
as far as I know, no.
We didn't have any references to look at or any people to speak to. So the challenge we faced was when the sapphire made contact with the superluminova, in some areas it would flatten any texture that the superluminova had down. It would push it down. But this wasn't always prevalent. It was because the pressure and the touching between these two surfaces varied with pressure and temperature fluctuations, right? So sometimes it would be there, sometimes it wouldn't. And it was really challenging to figure out what was going on. And the effect was similar to, if you put your finger up against sort of a pane of glass, you can see, your finger changes shape and color and it distorts. So this is kind of what we were seeing. And it took us so long to figure out what was causing this, what the reason was, and eventually what the possible solutions were. At one point, I thought it was mold because, you'd see it one day and then the next day I'd go back and it would be spreading and it would be getting worse. Yes. And the next day it would, it would recede and be getting better. And I was thinking, what is this? This looks like it's
crazy.
Living. This is, this is an organism or something. But turns out, it was the fluctuations in pressure. And the way we found it finally at one point is we kind of did a really high pressure test to see how much resistance the case could hold. Uh-huh. And we got the watch out and it was, it was blotchy in all sorts of patterns. And we're like, right, when that went in, it was perfect. And now it's come out, looking awful. So essentially, long story short, it took a full year longer to develop.
But at the end of the day, it turned out to be an amazing piece. And let me vouch for one thing. So you have Series 1, a piece which you can actually identify that a designer is behind it because of the details, right? And I think a lot of people can be impressed easily by looking at it. So you don't have to be an expert in watches. Oh my God, this looks amazing. I'm going to have it, right? It was different with Series 2. So Series 2, if you know watches, you're going to know that this was, again, designed not by an amateur. It was designed by a designer. For me, it was very simple, but it's extremely hard to execute and to put it all together. Because for me, having something very simple like the sapphire layer, having the numerals on it, and then seeing the shadow on the actual dial, for me, it was something unbelievable.
Well, that's it. A field watch in general is incredibly simple. You know,
and usually incredibly boring as well.
I wouldn't go that far. There's a lot of field watches that I like and admire, but I will say that, you know, it's a simple format. You know, it's one that has been, you know, redone countless times. And, you know, on that note, if you look at even the 4 introductions that we've made in that field watch series, we've got one where we have kind of stayed, I guess, you know, more true to a traditional aesthetic, right? A black dial, you know, traditional application of lume. And we found that is, you know, that's the least popular, likely because there are a lot of, you know, if you like that watch, you could get a Timex, you could get a Hamilton, you know, there's a lot of other opportunities. If you see, you know, a watermelon watch where you see the pink lemonade, kind of got a monopoly, you know, if you like that watch, and you know, there's nothing else quite like it. And yeah, that's something that's been a real strength.
But my point is that from the watermelon design of the Series 1 moving to the Series 2, something which is more sophisticated for people to understand, wasn't there a risk of, I mean, lowering the base or the targeted market?
It's a really good question, and that was something that played on my mind for a while. But what I had to kind of, you know, I had to take a step back and remember what led to the success of the 01 series. It wasn't thinking commercially, right? It wasn't listening to or trying to figure out what I thought people wanted. And I think a lot of people would have expected that the 02 series, when we introduced it, a lot of people just knew the brand as sort of fruity flavors on a dial. And it would be very easy for us to have introduced a field watch or any sort of watch and just, you know, pink and green on a dial. And suddenly that becomes our brand. But where would the brand be in 5 years' time? Would it still exist in 10 years' time? You know, with that sort of format, it could quite easily get saturated. What I wanted to show and communicate was what it means to be a studio underdog watch, right? And that is the design process, regardless of, you know, regardless of what the silhouette is or what the style is or what the colors are. It's about the process, right? So for the 01 series, the chrono, we took a 1960s style chronograph. We've got a lot of, you know, historical vintage references, a column wheel chrono movement, and a modern twist on the dial. And that twist is color and playful graphic design. The 02 series, despite it looking like a totally different watch, is exactly the same brief and blueprint, right? We've taken a 1940s brief, the brief from the Ministry of Defense. We stayed true to so many of those design elements, right? So in the, you know, what's the right word? Diverting here, but, you know, that 1940s brief, it required, you know, drilled lugs. It had to have a closed case back, you know, because when you're in the field, you don't need to admire a movement or
it's a heavy duty piece. So
heavy duty piece. You know, one of the things, the bezel is part of the mid case. It's made out of a single piece, and that was, you know, even designing that was a challenge to do that rather than 2 separate pieces. But we wanted to stay true to that brief, and then again, a modern twist on the dial. But instead of just using color, we wanted to innovate a bit more with material, and that's, you know, material being sapphire and superluminova. So long story short, that it was the same process which has resulted in different watches, but that's what it means to be a studio underdog watch. And I think, yeah, that's something that I'd like to continue. And I think that's a much better story that will allow us to be here in decades to come.
Yes.
You know, that's a lot of the decisions that I make is planning for the future. I want to make sure that the brand can be around, and I won't just make decisions because I think it'll sell well or be well received. I can tell you honestly, I didn't care if nobody bought the 02 series. For me, it was the right product because it helped to explain the process, which is what Studio Underdog is about.
So now the DNA of the brand is, I think it's known, at least known for me. You are a brand who are bringing fun to a very boring industry. From my own point of view as well, you're one of two. So it's you and second collaborations and all of this. This is bringing a lot of fun as well. And it has been something that nobody was used to it. Nobody have seen before, you know, and people are enjoying it. The only thing that you are even taking it a step, not step forward, but you're taking it differently because you're taking not boring, but conventional things and doing it differently with a slight taste of fun, a slight taste of colorfulness. So I really like that. But I wanted to as well ask you regarding the eggplant edition, because you actually mentioned to me and explained to me that it was a charity project. And my question to you is, don't you think it was too early for you as a brand to have a charity project? Because people at this point in time, when they are immature as a brand, they just want to survive, you know?
True. I mean, yeah, I guess even at that time, you know, the eggplant or the aubergine, as we say in the UK, it was relatively, you know, it was relatively soon after we'd introduced the brand. We were still a young brand. I think at the time I still had, you know, a full-time job, you know, alongside what I was doing. So this was a pure passion project. So you're probably right. You know, a savvy businessman would probably have sat me down and go, you know, Rich, by doing this charity project, you're going to tie up pretty much all of your cash flow. And because it's a charity project, you're not going to make any money. So you're not going to be able to grow the brand.
Not the smartest decision.
Yeah. But it was the right decision, you know, and I think that sort of unique approach, again, is something people can resonate with, something people can connect to. And I think it's, you know, I guess it's something that we're quite proud of, that we've done a number of charitable projects, you know, from the outset. And it's something that we'll look to do in the future, because it allows us to explore and be fun and do playful things. And I'm conscious as well that we always need to prioritize, you know, at any one time we've typically got quite a lot of orders on hand. So I want to make sure customers feel prioritized. When we do a charity project, it's not taking a huge amount of resource. You know, often it's not a huge drain on the assembly team, so we can still prioritize our customers whilst doing these fun, interesting stories. You know, a charity project will allow us to tell a story, to better, you know, get our message across and show what we're about.
I think it was 50 pieces, right? So it's a pretty rare underdog now. So
it is, yeah. Even at the time, you know, this was over 2 years ago, I believe. You know, when we were doing much smaller volumes compared to what we're doing now, you know, 50 pieces was still limited. I think they had, if my memory serves me right, I think there were 450 people on the website kind of looking to make that purchase. So the demand was, you know, multiples more than what was available. But there was literally no physical way for me, you know, to make that demand.
And moving from the aubergine / eggplant piece to the pizza party piece. And you know, I have a story with this piece. So briefly, for those who are listening to us, I was in Geneva for Watches and Wonders, and I knew that there would be a pizza party, right? And at the time of the pizza party in front of Beau Rivage, I texted your Instagram page and texted a couple of other people, and I couldn't find it. So and there was a guy on a bike with a box, like a container kind of bicycle, right? I thought that was the pizza party, so I kept running after him in Geneva, you know, and I almost missed my flight. And at the end of the day, you couldn't get it.
Wow. Well, you were so close. You were right in the right area. I'm sure you probably could have closed your eyes and smelt the pizza. You know, you were meters away. But look, we're here now. We've met and we're connecting.
But the known thing around this piece of the collaboration between you and Time and Tide was that it was an April Fool's. Was it actually an April Fool's, or that was a rumor?
No, it was, yeah. So, you know, it was an April Fool's. It was a total joke. It was, I remember making the phone call to Andrew McCutcheon, and I'd had this idea for this kind of faux launch, this April Fool's joke. Actually, on the subject of April Fool's, the aubergine, the eggplant, was originally an April Fool's, and we released it a year after as an introduction. So, you know, these jokey products, these April Fools are part of the brand. We're fun, we're playful. Of course, we want to, you know, make jokes when we can. So it was the pizza project started as a total joke. I called Andrew McCutcheon. I explained what my concept was, that I was stuck. You know, the idea for the video we were going to release was I was stuck on what my next design was. You know, I just had this huge success with the watermelon and the 01 series. Where do I go now? And I have this eureka moment where I open up a pizza box and it's, you know, it's a eureka moment. And as I was explaining it to him, I was butchering it. I was stumbling over my words. I couldn't think. I was like, he's going to think I'm a total fool. He's going to say no, and he's never going to talk to me again. And he's going to say, that guy's odd, But fortunately, he said, Rich, I'm going to stop you. Whatever it is, I'm up for it. It'll be fun. So he came down to Brighton. He came down to my flat. We recorded a short little video, and that was it. End of project. We put it online. People loved it. They thought it was funny. We did a fake launch for it and a fake drop. We announced this video in the morning. The drop was at sort of 5 p.m. that day, all on the 1st of April. And instead of the product being loaded, at 5 p.m., it just said, ha, April Fools, sort of gotcha. And I think we had sort of 850 people on the website at the drop hour, and got tens of thousands of views throughout that day. I'm sure most of those people, or I'd imagine a lot of those people, were just there for curiosity's sake. Yes. But evidently, there was also a lot of demand for it. Every time I went to a show, and I do a lot of shows in the US, New York, Chicago, San Francisco with Wind Up. Every time, I'd go to a wind up, some of the first people in the door would run up to the stand and go, Rich, you got to make the pizza. It's got to happen. So the more that happened, I said, okay, well, let's make some samples.
Yeah.
And we made some samples, we made some adjustments. I was kind of like, this is pretty cool. It's one thing it being a jokey render and seeing what the product looks like, but because we were able to execute it in quite a refined way,
yeah.
I was like, this kind of adds to the joke. So we went about launching it about a year after, maybe not quite a year after the original April Fools. And we wanted to do something unique. And we decided that this was going to be a hand-delivered project. So rather than just doing an online drop, we've done it. We've used it as a means to connect to the community.
Yeah, you had tour in how many countries?
Oh, I don't know. We've had a lot of pizza parties. Is kind of what we call it. We're doing our best to. This is an opportunity for me to meet communities. The brand exists because of the passion that the enthusiast community has. Yes. So, any excuse that I can have to connect with these people on a personal level and bring them something unique and something exciting. And also, when most watch brands, when they're doing an event, they have to have fancy cocktails and fancy champagne and canapes. We have pizza. We
do it like on the lake in Geneva. It's fine. It's Perfect. A public place. It's fine. But at the end of the day, it resonates with the DNA of the brand and the whole playfulness and colorfulness. And if you opened actually Instagram, you're gonna find because when you announced the tour destinations, you mentioned Dubai, but you never mentioned the date.
Yeah.
So if you open Instagram, you're gonna find me sending you asking, when are you guys gonna come? So a lot of people were actually like very excited about it.
Yeah. Well, here, maybe this. I can show you my way of thinking, and who knows, maybe this will be the first clue of potential future release. We'll see. One of the reasons that I had Dubai, because I knew I was coming here. We've recently launched an edition with Perpetual, and I was thinking, well, this would be a great time in the following days to do a pizza party, here, because I've seen there's a really passionate community. But I remembered, I was kind of very conscious that both of the pizza options that I have, pepperoni and Hawaiian, have, a pork-based meat on it. And I thought, I don't know. I thought that maybe that would be a bit disrespectful, or this is my first time in Dubai. I don't know what the culture is. So I said, maybe I'll come, I'll experience it, I'll meet people and better understand it, and then I can figure it out. But, the concept has been welcomed and people are able to enjoy it. But maybe in future we'll do an Eastern Arabic edition that doesn't contain any, any pork. So there you go.
But anyway, I'm a random sample and you're doing your market survey. I don't think it's gonna matter much. It's I think a lot of people are waiting for this, so maybe, I don't know, maybe in 1 month or two you might join us again and do a pizza party. But a lot of people are really excited about it. Let's move to a little bit deviated point, right, which we have briefly discussed previously. Let me give you a quick background story. So you issued the Series 1, and then people started looking into it and started catching people's eyes, and people started buying it. And I remember it was around 2,600 dirhams, more or less, after like the shipping and customs and all of that. And it was being resold on the secondary market for around 4,800 maybe. So close to double, close to. The thing is that when you've done the second drop of the Series 1 and Series 2, do you think that a lot of people that were considering that the value of the piece itself, since it's a limited run production, is gonna keep on rising and it's gonna hold a high value, higher than the retail, got disappointed or no?
The honesty is, I don't really care. Right. So I want, at the end of the day, I want my watches to go to those that love what I do. Right. If I'm able to produce watches that cost £500, 2,500 dirhams, and you can enjoy them, wear them, and in a couple of years move them on and get your money back, perfect. That is brilliant. You know, that's the perfect watch.
Doesn't happen much with micro brands anyway.
Exactly. But I want people to wear the watches to enjoy them. I don't want people to be buying my watches with the thought process that this is an investment, right? It's something that other brands kind of focus on and really protect. But quite simply, I want my watches to be worn and enjoyed. So it wasn't too much of a concern for me. What was a concern, and we spoke about this earlier today, was I was noticing that people were doing just that, not even just treating it as an investment, which is one thing, but literally treating it as, as a means to profit. So we had a lot of customers that, well, not a lot, but a handful of customers that would purchase a watch, on a drop day, and within hours would be listing it, on Chrono24 or eBay or whatever it is, looking to double, triple, quadruple their money. And that's quite evident that that's not an enthusiast.
Yes.
That's not, even someone that's looking as a watch for an investment, that still could be an enthusiast. This isn't. This is literally just looking for a profit. So, there we take the efforts and the energy to find out who those orders were and cancel them, because they were flipping it before they'd even received it. There's no way that they're in it for the watch. So we cancel those orders, and then we reallocate them to people that had missed out, or enthusiasts that were passionate about it. So everybody wins except the flipper. So everybody wins.
Exactly. And even you told me that the process of removing the ones with multiple orders, it was manual, so it wasn't an easy task even.
No, it was manual. It was an effort that we went to because we thought it was important, and we wanted to communicate that with our followers as well, to show, that this is our approach. We want our watches to go to those that love what we do, and we'll go to the efforts to really try and achieve that. So yeah, we've some of the time I dread to even say, I think one of the orders, it took us about 3 hours to finally connect the dots, because we'll only cancel an order, a pre-order even, when we're 100% sure. If I'm 99% sure, that means there's a 1% chance that this is a genuine enthusiast. It's not worth the risk. So I'll only do it when I'm 100% sure. And sometimes getting from 99% to 100% can take a little while, but it's worth the effort. And it also means in the long run, not only customers that are following the brand can enjoy that, and it's quite fun to see that sort of process. I make it very visual, and people can understand it. But it also means that watch gets reallocated, gets a home to someone that will wear it and enjoy it.
And Richard, let me ask you a question, which is, I don't think you're gonna be getting this question like the other questions that I've been asking, but this is a little bit of a different question. You think what would you be doing right now if things didn't go well with Studio Underdog? It's different. It's a different question, let's admit.
Well, even going back, so that would be, from the start, say we didn't have a successful initial campaign, right? Yeah. Even my way of thinking, and it's still to an extent, a way that I think today, I'm a bit of a worst case thinker at times. So when I did the original campaign, my worst case thinking was, I'm going to put a few £1,000s of my money to make some samples, do some developments, take some photos and things, and launch this, brand. if it doesn't go well, nobody likes it, which was quite a high chance. I thought it was just me, my mum, and my brother that would, be buying, or supporting, or at least saying that they like it. But if no one did, which was, a possibility, quite a high possibility, the worst case scenario was I'd have a few samples of watches that I designed.
You guys are gonna enjoy it.
That's a win for me, So even the worst case at that time was a win. Obviously, if the brand hadn't taken off and it wasn't successful, I wouldn't know that the opportunities and that I'm having now in terms of even traveling to Dubai and launching a watch. That's so crazy. If you told me that a few years ago, I wouldn't have believed it. So yeah, it's easy to be wise in hindsight. But I'd certainly be a designer. I'd be doing more design. But who knows? Maybe it wouldn't be in watches. Maybe I'd have designed my first chair or something. We'll never know.
Yeah, it's something that we would never know, and I'm happy that we're not gonna know, because I love what you're doing, and I want to see you succeeding and moving forward. Maybe I can wrap up with one question. So, where do you see the brand going? What's your, not end game, but what's your next stop, right?
So,
because it is challenging for you now, because thanks God you achieved a lot in not short time, but in good time, right? So the next stop for you can be challenging, because you're gonna challenge yourself as well.
I think so. Again, going back to the kind of the understanding of the brand, it's easy to see that we're playful and fun and whimsical. The thing that's almost a little bit harder to understand is that actually we take things very seriously. So that's kind of what I want to start focusing on. Obviously, the fun and playful elements are an integral and a core part of the brand. But I also kind of want to showcase, I guess, our pedigree as taking things seriously and being considered as, a serious watch brand, as it were. The innovations that we're making, the steps that we're taking, even just in terms of the assembly process, right? We're assembling all the watches in the UK. We're, I believe, the second largest assembler of watches in the UK.
Yep.
That's not to say we're huge. That's to say it's something that doesn't exist. Yes. So even in that in itself is kind of an innovation, something that we're proud of, and something that we're kind of having to build out. So when I say kind of be taken more seriously, that's part of it. And in terms of the short term and hopefully towards the end of the year, one way I want to achieve that is via collaboration. I'd like to be able to experiment with more complex movements or more innovative materials that I'm not sure the brand is ready to do so just yet. But in the long term, I think that could be really interesting. So it's a lot of stepping stones to get there, but rest assured we're not kind of we're not diverting too far from what we're doing now, because we love it and everyone else seems to love it as well.
And I can't tell you how much I'm gonna be waiting to see what Studio Underdog is gonna bring to us, because there is always surprise. You never know what is gonna be. So this is the tension that you're creating as well.
I'm ready to surprise you. This is just the start. This is just the start of Studio Underdog. So yeah, the plan is to be here for many decades to come, and for every maybe not every year, but as frequently as we can, surprise people, surprise the community, and bring joy, really.
And we're not expecting something less out of Studio Underdog, to be honest. We're gonna be all excited and hyped. And since we're running out of time, I really would like to take the chance again and thank you so much for accepting the invite. It's a great pleasure for you to come to my humble studio and do this episode with me.
You've got this the wrong way around. I should be thanking you. For those that are watching, Ahmed has taken me on a full day tour of Dubai. I've had one day to sort of see and explore Dubai, and we've done a whistle stop tour. I've learned so much. I'm going to sleep well tonight, I tell you. But no, I'm the one that should be thanking you. So thank you.
My pleasure, sir. Although he's a little bit exaggerating, and definitely this is not going to be either our last time to go out and hang out, and not our last podcast, of course. I want to see more of you in Dubai, because this is your first time, and hopefully, definitely, it's not going to be your last. But again, thank you so much, Richard. It has been a great pleasure. And yes, for those who are watching us at home, thank you so much for joining us. This podcast is available on YouTube and all other podcast platforms. Until next time, and thank you so much.
Like and subscribe.